Well, we got quite the workshop going out here. It looks like a mess too. We also have a purge pile inside the barn. We're trying to get everything we don't want anymore, set it in the barn. We're gonna get it on Craigslist or Marketplace or have a garage sale and get rid of it. But right now, people drive up with this giant open hole and they see all of it. So in order to close that up and to keep these chickens out of my barn, we're gonna make doors. Well, you may recall in the winter when we had the camper in there, we had sheet metal on both ends in order to close it in tight and keep it warm. Well, we tore the sheet metal down and put these doors up several months ago because when the camper was still in there, all my tools were right over there. And I needed to be able to open the door, get them outside, work, and then put them back in and protect from rain. But the other doors in the front, well, they held off for a while because we had to get the camper out and we just got other projects. But now we're trying to catch up. Here we are back out in the workshop here, or the barn. And we are building the second set of doors. You see those back doors back there. We start by cutting all these tulip pieces to size, 143 inches. And then we plane each one down to the exact same thickness, because obviously on the mill they come off slightly different sizes, but get the thickness out, get the bow out of them, and make them nice and flat. They go down to about 7/8 of an inch from there. And then we build the frame. Now there's a door built below that, and then we're building this one here, and we make the frame with these 2x4s and 2x6s, and we screw them, and then we put these nail plates on them. These nail plates on the corner make a nice tight corner that doesn't move. And of course, when all the boards are screwed on, then that helps too. Once we get that frame built, then there's a door underneath me. We build this, we have cross pieces in there, and we go ahead and screw it from this side. And then if we walk back here, we'll see what it looks like on the outside, because this is, of course, the inside of the door. This is the outside of the door. So you can see I'm building the outside frame right now with the 2x4s. And then, so it's upside down basically, or it's face down. And then we'll put the tulip boards on the back of that, and then we'll lift it up, stick it in the track up there. And it's a heavy door, so it's kind of hard to do. So in order to make this square, we do two things. First of all, we measure the diagonals. Make sure the diagonals are equal both ways before we put the nail plates on. And then in the middle, we cut this board exactly the same length as each end, because these outside boards aren't always exactly straight. And so we actually had to use cargo straps here because it was about 3/8 of an inch off. So we had to set the cargo straps, cut that board to the exact same size as the bottom and the top, and then we pulled it in before we put the nail plates on. So now we know with the equal diagonals and the equidistant center, we've got about as square of a door as we can possibly get.
So my husband's an engineer, and you know, he'll sit down and spend 20 minutes calculating all the right angles.
20 minutes, maybe 5 seconds.
So I take my board, I'm working on diagonals here to stabilize the door. I take my board, I lay it under where it goes, and I draw a line. Makes cutting the angle very precise. Just don't ask me what the angle is, I don't have a clue. But there's more than one way to...
And the site foreman, Rosa, checks every single line and every single cut.
Always in the way.
This method works, huh?
And there.
Every time. Right on.
Dump it in a little bit there.
No toe, no heel. It's perfect on. Good job. Right, Copper?
Sometimes I'm a little smarter than I look.
Foreman approves. We have to pre-tap into this oak because it's dried and it will rip the heads of these screws right off. So.
Again, I'm just trying to kind of hold it in place while we put on the outer layer there.
Well, when we cut and stack these boards, we want to make sure the grain is all in the right direction, the same direction. So what we do is we look at the end grain, and you see we've got smiley faces here, which means that the board wants to bow up in the middle. Basically, the smiley face wants to straighten out. So we put the bottom of the board against the frame so that if it wants to try to bow up, it's pushing against the frame. It keeps the board straighter. Now, some of these boards actually have grain perpendicular to the face, which is quarter sawn, and that's not going to move much at all, if any. So it's only the ones that are plain sawn that will do that. So I think we've got them all stacked, planed, and the frame is good. It's square, it's solid. We're going to start putting it on. So before we put the facing on, we want to take the opportunity to go ahead and put this trolley system on because the boards aren't in the way, and it just makes it a lot easier. In fact, this top board I actually drilled before we put it all together. And what I did was I marked both sides, and I used a 1/2-inch drill bit and went in from both sides to make sure I would come out in the center, because you really want this on the center of that board. You only have 1.5 inches to play with, and it's a 1/2-inch bolt going through there. Now, in the old days, and still today sometimes, I do use the old manual drill because it can make really long holes, and it's longer than basically these reaches can do. But this board is small enough that I can go in from both sides and have the holes meet in the center. The last thing I do is I actually round out the outer hole with this spade bit here, and I'll show you that. Right there, and over here. The reason I do that is because this hardware, although it comes with everything you need to install it, we don't want this hole to wallow out. In other words, we don't want over time that hole to get bigger and bigger and bigger because the side of the screw is pushing on it. So with this washer in there, it basically protects the wood. Now, we purchased this separately because the kit only comes with these. So if we put this on, washer, it's a tight fit. You see these little gouges here. When you tighten this nut down, those gouges kind of dig into the wood to keep that nut from working itself free. And so then you have the trolley here. You can adjust the door in and out, away from the barn or closer to the barn by turning. That's why this has a neck like that. It allows you to move the door in and out when it's installed on the track, and that's very, very useful. And then, of course, you tighten this down, and the nut doesn't move at all. You also want to make sure, that's why it's so critical to have this door centered. You don't want that nut to go above the frame because it'll push the board up. So you want to make sure that is relatively centered. It's a little bit off-centered, but the nut is fully under the level of the board there, so it does not push up the surface board. put these on, we lay several at a time, try to jam them up against each other to decrease the gaps. And we also do the diagonals and the cross beam at the same time. Otherwise, you get the whole thing on and you'll forget where those are. Now, the way to do it if they're all on is just to go ahead and take a chalk line from that side to that side. But it's easier just to do it while you're moving down the line because you can see exactly where that board is. And screwing on these diagonals gives a lot of lateral stability to the door, so it's very important that you do screw into those. Well, we pre-tap the oak because it'll rip the heads off if we don't. This tulip pre-taps so it doesn't split the wood. It's pretty dry, but if it dries at all, it could split. So, especially with a thin piece on the edge like this, it could definitely split. So, we try to be cautious whenever we do this because we want this door to last a long, long time. We're all done with both doors except handles, of course. But the next step is actually to put the header above the door and get the tracks up. We need to level those, and that's quite a chore, so we're going to have to take the scaffolding from the back and roll it around to the front.
So this is half of the track that'll be up here. This is a 12-foot section. And you can see the back of this one's a little bit, I guess, corroded just a little bit. It was wrapped in plastic, but it's been sitting out here in the weather since we ordered it. The tracks come with several styles of brackets, whichever one you choose. This particular bracket we opted because it will allow us to actually put a waterproof cover over it to keep water from, running down behind the track. So we'll get to that later. But these are really quite simple. You can see there's a hole in the top here, kind of a keyhole style. And there's just this little button here. You slip it right into place and then you hammer it. And I hammer it until I can just see the hole appearing on the other side. I know it's in. So I'll do this every 2 feet. So this will have 6 of these and we'll get it hung up.
All right, now we have to put our door tracks on. We have a 12-foot opening, and each door is about 76.5 inches wide, just over 6 feet, so it will fully cover that opening when they're closed. That means I need 24 feet of track. So what I did was I measured from down there, shot a laser level 24 feet down that way, and made sure it was perfect across the span because the doors, when they slide, you don't want any slope at all in there. So it's really important to get that level. It makes for a really smooth sliding door. Now what I have here are just 2x4 scab blocks. So when I take this header and put it up, it rests on those, and I can check level again and get it all screwed in without having to hold it up. Now, you might be thinking that's not much of a header. Well, it isn't. Right behind here, right behind these boards, is the big header. And it's, I think it's 3" by 12" if I remember correctly. And then those extend out over there. So behind this boarding is the real header that's holding the weight. This simply is something to screw the tracks to. So I will have 5" ledger locks, lag bolts that'll go all the way through this siding and into the header in the back.
Ledger locks. Sean really likes these. Nice, long, they hold well. So there's a little coupler that is used to join the two pieces of track up there, but we have to put it on the first piece before we mount it. Well, I guess this is a keeping it real moment. When I built the first door, I put that cross beam on center, but the problem was we had it face down. So I wasn't able to do exact measurements when I built the second door. So I just tried to do on center again. Unfortunately, looks like we got it off a little bit, and we're gonna have to do a little bit of repair work to kind of adjust that, but
Okay, so we fixed our asymmetric X problem. The doors are now just like each other and they look nice. The last adjustment we have are on these hangers here, 2 hangers per door, and you can adjust those nuts up and down to level the door, or if it's got an asymmetric gap here in the middle, you can actually tilt the door slightly to make that gap consistent all the way down. But I've gone ahead and leveled both doors. And the last thing is there's a small flat tab on the bottom here that allows you to turn. Remember that screw is curved, so if I turn it, it makes the door go in or out. So in towards the wall or out away from the wall, which is important when you have trim. You want to set it such that it glides right over the top of the trim. And we're going to put some in the back, but right now I'll just set it about 1 inch away from the wall. You want it pretty tight on the edges because you don't want things to get in the side of the door, and you don't want a whole lot of airflow there too, especially in the winter when you're trying to cut down the breeze in there. But I love these rollers. They're very, very smooth. I'm estimating these doors are about 250 pounds a piece, and it's real easy for the kids to open and close these doors because they glide so nicely. So that's about it. We're going to get some trim on here, and I've now got the barn totally enclosed. Well, we're going to finish up those front doors, but we've come to the back side to show you the last steps that we take before it's complete and sealed in. If you come here to the left, you first need to put this trim on right here. Then you adjust the top of the door to basically tighten up against that trim so you don't have a big gap. And on the bottom, you have this piece of hardware. Now, these tracks and all this hardware is made by Cannonball, and we found that they are about half the price of some of the big barn stores, so Cannonball is a great site. So this wheel can adjust in and out to push the door in or let it come out. We like a pretty tight fit because we don't want any raccoons to get in there, and raccoons can move these doors, believe it or not. So as we come back, I'll unlatch it. All the way to the back, we have a stop so that the door doesn't go too far back. And these are nice too because when it's on the stop and the wind is blowing, the stop and the wheel hold it in. You can't get wind behind it swinging that door out. And then when it's fully closed, Cannonball also makes a center stop, which we don't have installed here, but you can put a center stop on there too to keep the door from blowing out and from raccoons from trying to pry underneath that door. So these are great little additions that really seal that door up from predators. Well, it's really nice to have that big hole closed up. So thanks again for watching this week. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have subscribed, leave a comment. We love to read them.